Most people never remember the moment they were taught the lie. It doesn't arrive as a warning or a rule written down somewhere. It slips in quietly, dressed as common sense, repeated so often it starts sounding like truth. It usually starts with praise. You're smart. You work hard. You're responsible. If you do the right things, life will eventually reward you. That message feels fair, comforting, logical. It suggests the world is balanced, that effort and outcome are connected in a clean, predictable way. So you grow up believing money works the same way everything else does. Put in enough effort, follow the rules, avoid obvious mistakes, and you'll be fine. And for a while it looks like that's true. You get your first job, your first paycheck, that first moment where you feel independent. You're not reckless. You don't blow it all at once. You budget, at least loosely. You tell yourself you'll get more serious later, when there's more to manage. That's when the system quietly steps in. Credit is introduced not as debt, but as convenience. A tool. A reward for being trustworthy. Spend now, pay later. Spread it out. Make life smoother. The numbers are small enough not to scare you. Monthly payments feel manageable. Everyone else is doing it. At the same time, spending pressure never sleeps. Advertising doesn't ask you if you need something. Tells you who you should be if you had it. Social media turns comparison into a full-time job. You're not just buying products anymore. You're buying relief from feeling behind. You scroll past people your age living lives that look effortless. Better apartments. Better trips. Better experiences. And even if you know it's curated, the feeling still lands. Because emotionally, your brain doesn't care about disclaimers. Cares about belonging. So you participate. You upgrade gradually. Nothing dramatic. Nothing irresponsible. Just small adjustments that feel earned. A nicer place. A better phone. A few more subscriptions. A lifestyle that matches what you think your level of effort deserves. And here's the cruel part. None of this feels like failure. You're still working hard. You're still smart. You're still doing what you were told responsible adults do. Yet somewhere underneath, there's a constant tension you can't quite explain. You're anxious about money even when you're making more than you used to. You think about it more often than you want to admit. You feel behind even though you're technically progressing. There's always a low-level pressure humming in the background, reminding you that one unexpected problem could knock everything off balance. This is where most people blame themselves. They assume they must be bad with money, undisciplined, late, missing some secret everyone else understands. They consume more advice, watch more videos, read more posts. Most of it sounds logical. Most of it focuses on numbers, percentages, strategies, hacks. And yet, nothing really changes. Because almost all mainstream financial advice ignores the most important factor: behavior. It assumes humans are rational. That if you know what to do, you'll do it. That if the math makes sense, the habits will follow. But that's not how people work. Money decisions aren't made in spreadsheets. They're made in moments of stress, boredom, excitement, insecurity, and comparison. They're made late at night scrolling. They're made when you're tired. They're made when you want relief more than optimization. And the system is designed around that. Easy credit doesn't exist to help you. It exists because people are predictable. Endless spending pressure exists because insecurity converts well. Comparison culture exists because attention is profitable. None of this means you're weak. It means you're human. This is the first thing most people need to hear, and almost no one says it clearly. If you're anxious about money despite being smart and hardworking, that doesn't mean you failed. It means the training you received was incomplete. You were taught how to earn, not how to resist. You were taught how to budget, not how to design a life that reduces temptation. You were taught formulas, not psychology. At some point, usually after enough frustration builds, you encounter a different kind of voice. Not loud, not flashy, not promising freedom in 30 days or wealth by next year. This voice is calm, measured, almost boring. It doesn't talk about getting rich. It talks about behavior, about patterns, about why people repeat the same mistakes even when they know better. It doesn't shame. It observes. It points out something uncomfortable but relieving at the same time. Most money problems aren't math problems. They're emotional ones. They come from habits formed under pressure. from environments designed to extract attention and spending, from beliefs absorbed without being questioned. This realization lands softly at first, then heavier as it sinks in. If money problems are behavioral, not mathematical, then earning more isn't a solution by itself. Intelligence isn't enough. Motivation isn't enough. Even discipline without structure eventually breaks. And that's the moment tension enters the story. Because if this is true, then most people weren't failing because they didn't try hard enough. They were failing because they were trained to play a game that quietly worked against them. At some point, usually quietly, people start feeling behind. Not broke. Not desperate. Just behind. It's a strange feeling because there's no clear evidence for it. Bills are paid. Life is functioning. On paper, things are okay. And yet the feeling persists, growing louder the more people try to ignore it. It shows up in small moments. When you see someone younger than you doing better. When a raise doesn't feel like relief. When you hit a milestone you once dreamed about and immediately feel underwhelmed. When you think, I should be happier than this. That feeling is the tension most people live inside without naming it. The natural response is to assume the solution is more. More income. More progress. More achievements. Feeling behind hurts, then getting ahead must be the cure. So people push harder. They chase the next level. They set bigger goals, thinking satisfaction is waiting just one step further. But the strange thing is, it never seems to arrive. Every increase comes with an adjustment. Every win recalibrates the baseline. The moment something becomes normal, it stops feeling like progress. And suddenly the gap reappears right where it was before. This is where the real conflict begins because the mind starts asking questions it doesn't know how to answer. Why does more money never feel like enough? Why does security feel temporary no matter how much you improve? Why does it feel like everyone else is moving faster even when you're running? The uncomfortable truth is that expectations are rarely created by our own needs. They're created externally, by what we see, by what we're told is normal, by the constant stream of other people's highlight reels that quietly redefine what enough looks like. Social media doesn't just show you lifestyles. It sets benchmarks. It normalizes excess. It turns rare outcomes into daily exposure. When you see luxury, freedom, and success displayed constantly, your brain adjusts. It treats those images not as exceptions, but as reference points. So even when your life improves, your expectations sprint ahead. This is why comparison feels so exhausting now. You're no longer comparing yourself to a few people in your immediate circle. You're comparing yourself to thousands of carefully curated lives, optimized for envy. And comparison doesn't stop once you reach a certain level. It escalates with you. Lifestyle inflation plays its role too. Not because people are irresponsible, but because comfort expands quietly. You don't feel like you're upgrading your lifestyle. You feel like you're maintaining it. What once felt like luxury becomes baseline. What once felt optional becomes necessary. So when income rises, relief doesn't follow. Obligations rise with it. Expectations rise with it. And the emotional distance between where you are and where you think you should be stays exactly the same. For younger people, this creates a different kind of tension. Many feel doomed before they even begin. They look at housing prices, debt, wages, and assume the game is already rigged. The future feels smaller than it did for previous generations. Stability feels delayed. Ownership feels out of reach. They haven't failed yet, but they already feel behind. For older listeners, the tension cuts differently. Sounds like time pressure. Like regret. Like the quiet fear that the window for meaningful change is closing. They wonder if it's too late to fix decisions made years ago. Too late to course correct. Too late to build something that actually feels secure. Different ages. Same emotion. Behind. And the worst part is that no one talks about it honestly. People either brag or complain but rarely explain. The feeling becomes isolating. You assume everyone else has figured something out that you missed. This is where awareness starts replacing discomfort. Because the problem isn't lack of progress. It's the moving target. Happiness doesn't come from how much you have. It comes from the gap between what you expected and what you're living. When expectations rise faster than reality, satisfaction collapses. And in a world designed to constantly raise expectations, that collapse becomes normal. That realization is dangerous because once you see it, you can't unsee it. It forces a hard question. If chasing more doesn't close the gap, what does? And that question sits there, unresolved, pulling the audience deeper into the story, because it suggests something unsettling. Maybe the feeling of being behind isn't a sign that you're failing. Maybe it's a signal that you've been measuring your life by standards that were never meant to make you feel whole. At some point in the middle of all this pressure, a subtle shift has to happen or nothing ever changes. It's the moment where blame starts turning inward, not in a self-critical way but in an honest one. Because as long as the problem feels external, it stays unsolvable. The economy, the system, the timing, other people, those things matter, but they're not where control lives. The turning point begins with a simple but uncomfortable observation. Money is easy to measure. Life satisfaction is not. You can track income down to the cent. You can watch numbers go up and down. You can compare yourself to others instantly. There's clarity in that even when it hurts. But things like peace of mind, safety, independence, and control are abstract. They're harder to define, harder to quantify, and harder to show off. So people default to what they can measure. They chase money not because they love money but because money feels like proof. Proof that they're doing well. Proof that their effort is paying off. Proof that they're not falling behind. It becomes a scoreboard in a game where the real objective was never clearly explained. Here's the quiet truth most people never stop to articulate. People don't actually want money. They want safety, the ability to handle emergencies without panic. They want independence, the option to say no when something feels wrong. They want control over their time, their choices, their future. They want peace of mind, the absence of constant financial noise in their head. Money just looks like the fastest way to get there. So they chase it relentlessly. And when it doesn't deliver the feeling they expected, they assume they need more of it. This is why you can find people who earn impressive amounts and still feel deeply anxious. They have income but no margin. They have assets but no flexibility. They have status but no peace. Their lives look successful, but their nervous systems are exhausted. And at the same time, you'll meet people who earn modestly and seem fine, calm, grounded, unrushed. They don't live extravagantly, but they don't live in fear either. Their expenses are aligned with their values. Their time feels like it belongs to them. That contrast is unsettling when you first notice it, because it suggests that money itself was never the finish line. It was the proxy. The realization lands slowly, then all at once. You've been chasing the symbol instead of the substance, status instead of security, appearance instead of stability, more instead of enough. And once you see that, it reframes everything. You start noticing how often spending isn't about need at all. It's emotional. It's reactive. It's self-medication. A way to soothe stress, boredom, insecurity, or comparison. A way to feel momentarily ahead, even if nothing actually changes underneath. Retail therapy isn't a joke. It's a coping mechanism. Upgrades aren't always about quality. They're often about identity. About trying to feel aligned with who you think you should be by now. Every purchase becomes a small attempt to close the gap between expectation and reality. And the system encourages this. Tells you happiness is one click away. That discomfort is a problem to be solved immediately. That waiting is unnecessary. That you deserve relief now. So when money never feels safe, the instinct isn't to pause. It's to spend, earn, or optimize harder. But safety doesn't come from volume. Comes from alignment. When your spending is disconnected from your real needs, no amount of income feels sufficient. When your lifestyle depends on constant performance, money becomes fragile. When your identity is tied to consumption, security disappears the moment comparison enters the room. This is the point where the audience usually feels exposed. Not because they've done something wrong, but because they recognize the pattern. The way they justify purchases emotionally. The way they chase milestones that don't bring relief. The way money feels loud even when it's technically under control. And then comes the dangerous thought. If spending is often emotional self-medication, if income doesn't automatically create safety, if status doesn't equal security, then what actually does? That question hangs there, unanswered, heavy with implication, because it suggests that the solution isn't out there. It isn't a new strategy or a higher salary. It's a shift in how money is used, not how much of it is made. And once that idea enters the mind, It changes the tone of the entire conversation. Money stops being the goal. It becomes the mirror. There's a moment in every real shift where complexity collapses into something simple. Not simplistic. Simple in the way gravity is simple. Inescapable once you understand it. This is that moment. Because after all the psychology, all the pressure, all the confusion around money, it comes down to a division so clean it almost feels unfair that no one told you earlier. Every dollar you spend goes into one of two buckets. That's it. No third option. No overlap. No clever workaround. Every single dollar is either making your life better, or it's trying to impress people who are not thinking about you. First, that sounds obvious. Almost insulting. Of course people know this. Of course they're spending for themselves. But sit with it long enough and the discomfort starts creeping in. Because once you apply this lens honestly, things you've never questioned suddenly feel exposed. Take clothes. There's clothing that genuinely makes your life better. Comfortable. Durable. Appropriate for your environment. You forget you're wearing it because it doesn't demand attention. It supports your life without becoming the point of it. And then there's clothing designed to be noticed. Logos. Trends. Styles that feel outdated the moment the algorithm moves on. Pieces you're slightly uncomfortable in, but wear anyway because discomfort feels like the price of relevance. You tell yourself it's self-expression. Sometimes it is. Often it's reassurance. Cars work the same way. There are cars that get you where you need to go reliably. Safe. Efficient. Predictable. They disappear into the background of your life, freeing mental space. And then there are cars that announce something. Success. Taste. Arrival. They turn heads for a few seconds at a stoplight, then vanish from everyone's mind the moment the light changes. You carry the payment long after the attention is gone. Vacations follow the same pattern. Some trips genuinely restore you. They slow time. They reconnect you with yourself or the people you care about. You come back calmer, clearer, better. Others are planned backwards from how they'll look online. You spend more time documenting them than experiencing them. They create exhaustion disguised as luxury. And once the photos are posted, the value evaporates. Homes are perhaps the most dangerous example. There are homes that serve your life. Right-sized. Functional. A base that supports your priorities. A place where peace actually exists. And then there are homes that perform. Square footage as status. Neighborhoods as validation. Mortgage payments stretching time thin in exchange for admiration that rarely materializes. Here's the illusion underneath all of this. People don't admire owners. They admire objects. And even that admiration is fleeting. Envy is not respect. It's projection. People see something they wish they had, feel something briefly, and move on. They don't think about the debt, the pressure, the trade-offs, the stress you absorb to fund the image. They're not watching your life. They're scrolling past it. Once you see this clearly, a strange emotional shift happens. Embarrassment, maybe, or relief, because it explains so much. Why spending feels good briefly, then hollow. Why upgrades don't bring peace. Why money leaks even when income rises. You weren't buying things. You were renting approval. And approval is the most expensive currency there is because it never pays you back. This is where the second reveal lands, heavier than the first. Debt is stolen time. Not abstract time. Not hypothetical future. Your actual hours. Your actual energy. Your future decisions already spoken for. Every dollar of debt represents work you haven't done yet. Pre-committed to a past version of you who wanted relief, comfort, or validation in the moment. Debt doesn't just cost interest. It costs options. It narrows your future before you arrive there. Savings, on the other hand, is reclaimed future. It's not about the number in the account. It's about what that number allows you to do or not do. It's time you've bought back from obligation. It's leverage over uncertainty. And this is where the emotional misunderstanding around saving finally cracks. Saving isn't deprivation. It isn't punishment. It isn't delayed gratification in the way people imagine it. Saving is instant independence. The moment you save $1 instead of spending it to impress someone, you gain flexibility. Not later. Immediately. That dollar becomes a small vote for future calm. A buffer against panic. A quiet refusal to be rushed. This reframing changes everything. Suddenly, restraint doesn't feel like loss. Feels like power. Not loud power. Not visible power. Quiet power. The kind that lets you walk away. The kind that lets you wait. The kind that lets you choose based on values instead of urgency. This is why independence, not wealth, is the real flex. Wealth shouts. Independence whispers. Wealth begs to be seen. Independence doesn't need witnesses. When you start filtering every dollar through these two buckets, decisions get simpler. Not easier emotionally, but clearer. You stop asking, "Can I afford this?" You start asking, "Which bucket does this belong in?" And once you ask that honestly, a lot of things lose their appeal. Because impressing people who aren't thinking about you suddenly feels like a bad trade. You begin to feel the weight of how many decisions in your past were made under pressure, comparison, or expectation rather than genuine improvement to your life. Not in a way that creates shame, in a way that creates awareness. And awareness is dangerous to systems built on impulse. Because once you understand that independence compounds faster than income, once you feel how powerful it is to owe nothing emotionally or financially to anyone else's opinion, you stop trying to look rich. You start trying to feel free. And that realization doesn't just change how you spend money, changes how you see success itself. People think the finish line is money. They think once they make enough, something inside them will finally unclench. That the noise in their head will quiet. That the fear will loosen its grip. But that moment rarely comes. Because being rich and being wealthy are not the same thing. Being rich is loud. It spends. Proves. It upgrades. It leaks money everywhere just to feel real. Being rich is fragile because it has to be maintained. Every expense becomes a promise to the future you don't control. Being wealthy is quiet. Almost invisible. It doesn't need witnesses. Wealth is waking up and realizing nothing urgent is chasing you. No bill screaming for attention. No paycheck standing between you and panic. No job holding your life hostage because you have no margin. That's the difference no one teaches. You can make a lot of money and still feel poor if every dollar already has a job before it reaches you. You can earn less and feel rich if your time belongs to you. Look at the people society points to as winners. Billionaires who can't disappear for a week without consequences. Executives who haven't had a peaceful meal in years. Founders who can't stop working because the machine collapses if they step away. They have money, but they don't have freedom. Now look at the people no one posts about. The ones who quietly leave jobs they don't like. The ones who take random Tuesdays off. The ones who don't flinch when the market dips because their life isn't balanced on leverage and hope. They aren't famous. They aren't impressive online. But they sleep. They can say no without rehearsing excuses. They can walk away without negotiating with fear. They don't chase approval because they don't need permission to live. That's wealth. The real goal isn't abundance. It's independence. Independence from needing every paycheck to land perfectly. Independence from impressing people who won't be there when things go wrong. Independence from lifestyles that look good but feel heavy. When you stop trying to win, something strange happens. Life gets lighter. Money stops being a scoreboard. Stops being a comparison tool. Stops being a way to prove you matter. It becomes insulation. Insulation from chaos. From volatility. From bad luck. From the inevitable moments where life doesn't care about your plans. Because fear never disappears. It just changes shape. People fear market crashes. They fear layoffs. They fear illness. They fear becoming irrelevant. They fear starting over. Savings doesn't make you fearless. It makes you resilient. It doesn't say, "Nothing bad will happen." It says, "If it does, I won't collapse." That's not pessimism. That's respect for reality. Life is uncertain. Pretending otherwise is expensive. Every dollar saved is a small act of self-trust. A quiet promise to your future self that you won't abandon them when things get hard. That you won't force them into desperation because present you wanted comfort or validation. And here's the part that hits hardest for most people. The more you need money to feel okay, the less power you actually have. Needing less gives you leverage no salary ever will. When you don't need to spend, no one can rush you. When you don't need approval, no one can control you. When you don't need constant upgrades, no one can trap you in a race you never agreed to run. That's why the calmest people in the room often have the least to prove. They're not chasing. They're choosing. They choose sleep over stress, stability over flash, freedom over applause. They understand something most people learn too late. Money is not the reward. It's the buffer. And the best financial decision you'll ever make isn't about how much you earn. It's about how little fear you're willing to tolerate in your life. Independence is the real wealth. If there's one thing to take with you, let it be this. The best financial advice isn't complicated. It's uncomfortable because it's simple, and simple things remove excuses. Save before you spend. Not what's left over. Not what you tried to save. First. Before anything else touches your account. Because whatever comes second becomes optional, and saving should never be optional. Treat savings like an expense. The most important one you have. Rent gets paid. Utilities get paid. Your future deserves the same respect. When you frame saving as something you owe yourself, it stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like protection. Automate what you can. Not because you're lazy, but because willpower is unreliable. Life gets busy. Motivation fades. Automation removes emotion from the process. Money moves in the background while you live in the foreground. And be average. On purpose. Average returns. Average strategies. Average discipline repeated consistently. Because boring works. Flashy fails. The people who win long-term aren't smarter. They're steadier. You don't need perfect timing. Waiting for the right moment is just fear wearing a calendar. You don't need insider knowledge. Most of it is noise designed to make you feel late and inadequate. And you don't need big wins. Big wins attract big mistakes. What you actually need is awareness. Awareness of where your money goes. Awareness of why you spend. Awareness of which habits are quietly costing you peace. You need discipline. Not extreme discipline. Just enough to do the right thing on ordinary days. Especially on ordinary days. And you need time. Time to let small decisions stack. Time to let patience beat intensity. Time to let consistency do what effort alone cannot. The truth is, most people don't lose financially because of one terrible decision. They lose because of thousands of small ones they never questioned. And the moment you start questioning them, you change the direction of your life. This isn't about becoming wealthy overnight. It's about building a life that doesn't crack under pressure. A life where setbacks don't become disasters. A life where money supports your values instead of fighting them. At some point you stop asking, how much can I afford? And start asking, what does this cost me in freedom? That's when you've learned the lesson. You don't measure success by what you own. You measure it by how easily you can walk away from what no longer serves you. And that's why the goal isn't to be rich. The goal is to be unbreakable.